I just thought, let me say this, that I've never been on cloud 9. Today I think it's cloud all. So this is the observation that I have. My topic is global perspective. Manu has already covered much of the US market. That really kind of eases the flavor that I have. Let me start with certain disclaimers. Just as Manu said, I'm also saying that views are absolutely personal. Second, what is known to me is now being shared. And I concede that each one of you who's sitting here knows more than me. So what am I doing here? What I'm doing here is then to cull certain stories, certain pieces, and weave them into a broad storyboard, which is consistent with the theme that's been given to me. And Lord Fit would have already been seen before, shared before, discussed before, debated before. What then is the global perspective? What I'm trying to do is to define global perspective here, is to bring you to notice the global best practices in few of the mature markets. And I'm defining also mature market, lest somebody feels it is disrespectful to talk about that. What it means is higher penetration with higher density linked with evolved market practices. This is the agenda flow. I'll start with principles of sustainable insurance, that's the topic. And then we'll flow it down to global development into certain trends that I see personally, pieces lying somewhere, and can I read them in the storyboard here? The risks, the changing profile that I see, especially in the last 10 years, and I'm really concerned on many factors which have actually contributed to this, including climate change and so on and so forth. Two of the markets that I have picked up to construct the storyboard here one is Lloyd's. Not to say that I represent Lloyd's, but Lloyd's is the only marketplace in the world as opposed to being a unitary insurance company. And then I thought, let me pick up a mutual, which is absolutely synonymous with risk management, and that is FM Global. They go much beyond combined. They combined, if you're really talking in terms of combined for the risk industry in terms of 80 or 90 or whatever, they're much below. And what they do as a mutual, they operate below that and they give it back to their mutual partners in terms of credits, and that's how they operate all over the world. And then we'll try and see what the upshot is and if there can be any final takeaway. Let's start with principles of sustainable insurance. And I thought, let me start with somebody who couldn't be better than Ban Ki-moon, who's a UN Secretary General. He's defining the principles of sustainable insurance as these principles providing a global roadmap to develop and expand, and mark these words, to develop and expand innovative risk management and insurance solutions, starting with risk management first. It's talking about innovative risk management and insurance solutions that we need to promote. Look at areas that he wants us to promote. The renewable energy, clean water, food security, sustainable cities and disaster resilient communities, something which I think should be the bedrock of any of the operations. Consistently the theme has emerged that we need to be making money. And if we need to be making money, it has to be for certain larger purposes in the society. I'm so happy Manalu mentioned the fact that if Singapore can become the regional hub, why can't India be a better regional hub? And if we can do this, wonderful. With world premium volume of more than $4 trillion, That's life and non-life combined. Life is more, about 2.2, non-life is about 1.8, or a little less than that, $1 trillion. And global assets under management of more than $24 trillion. Insurers that embed sustainability in their business operations can catalyze the kind of financial and investment flows and long-term perspectives needed for sustainable development. So what happens is that when I do this right, I attract the best of talent, I attract the best of capital, I have the best of and most innovative of the risk management and insurance solutions. It's a win-win for all, and therefore I give a huge fillip to the societal development. So, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is sustainable insurance can only be realized through sustainable underwriting. That's the bottom line. Let's see what are certain global development and trends that I see at my level, which I've been interacting with some of the people out there. So what are these development and trends? One, there have been virtually cataclysmic changes due to China's rapidly emerging as the strongest economy in the world. The current 6% of the world's population contributing to 60% of the world's GDP is changing. Believe me, it is changing. By 2025, emerging markets, which are now contributing about 7%, they are expected to contribute more than 15-16%. Much of it actually owing to the developments around China. And if you see, you go, you talk, you find there is growth, there is development, there is buzz everywhere. And believe me, the world is lapping it up. They're really lapping it up. The second trend that I see, and that's a major trend, and I think this is implicit in Manalu's presentation as well, the impact of the interest rates in the global arena. If in 1985 you wanted to have an ROE of 12%, all you had to do was to generate a combined ratio of somewhere between 106 to 108. If you wanted to repeat this ROE of 12% in 2001, you had to do it between 98 to 101. And today, in 2012, it has been brought down to 84.5 to 88.7 around the globe. So that's the measure of the impact of the interest rates on the combined and the profitability globally as far as the insurance operations are concerned. The third development, this is a huge development, is that Berkshire Hathaway is now becoming a very serious player. And when they are becoming a very serious player, what it means is that the world is now going to be seeing a capital availability of close to $100 billion. Till now, Berkshire Hathaway being led by our own genius, Ajit, what they would do is that they would wait for a disaster to happen. After the disaster is there, swoop upon that area, suck the premium capacity, suck the premiums out, and they, knowing fully well in the next 4 or 5 years there is nothing going to happen, be happy, make tons and tons of money. And they now have decided that this kind of operation will not do, and therefore let's become a serious insurance player. And look at the way it has kind of resonated in the US industry. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway's rating actually has been downgraded. And why it has been downgraded? Because analysts are saying that now you're depending on insurance operation much more, and that's not such a healthy thing. That's a different thing. But all I'm saying is a related development which happens somewhere. The other is reinsurance capital today stands at $505 billion. In 1 year alone, between 2011 and 2012, it has risen by $50 billion alone. And that's this, how much of the premium do they write here? as I said, they would be writing somewhere around $175 to $180 billion of reinsurance premium. Look at the US state, which you have talked about. US has today a capital base of something like $583 billion. And around the same time, they write the same amount of premium. And there's one country, and I think Chandru had asked this question, what really happened, why US should actually be compared to India, or India is comparable to US, etc. Well, in the last 50 years, it's only around 10 times or 11 times, or maybe around 12 times, that US P&C industry would have made money on underwriting. So that means they're losing money. But what we have seen in the previous presentation, there are companies like Geico, Progressive, etc., by virtue of being very selective and being more clever, they are still making money in a land which has traditionally been so competitive. The fifth development is around the distribution sidecar. They call it sidecar, which has been developed for the first time between Aon and Berkshire Hathaway. Do I have time till about 3:15? Chandru, is that 3:15 or so? I'll try and finish it before. What they've done is that Aon have decided that all the mid-market policies, where Lloyd's underwriters are the leaders, they will have 7.5% subscription capital coming in from Berkshire. So that's the sidecar. On one hand, they're telling you that they have given back into compliment to the Lloyd's market, saying that you do your underwriting very well. But at the same time, it has to be absolutely accretive to the market. Otherwise, this is having a danger of more and more sidecars being produced like this to the detriment of the market. Now let us see the definition of soft cycles. Now you have the hard cycles, the soft cycles decided by the severity losses or the catastrophic losses. Today the definition of the soft cycle actually has been changed by the interest rates. And how the underwriters are responding to it? They're responding through wordings, through distribution, through capital and reinsurance management, and through portfolio management. The other development that we see around the globe is the convergence of capital from the insurance and the capital markets. It's already, in 2012, this market is already close to about, if you really take the cat bonds and certain other instruments which are there in the play, if you see 2012, this market is already $30 billion. And they're saying by 2017, this will be 1/3 of the total reinsurance portfolio. So for the first time, the world is seeing a real conversion between these two markets. The global industry sees 80-20 rule, which is what probably we have seen in our market as well. 20% of the risks produce 80% of the losses. The questions that Mangaru raised, can we classify, can we factorize, can we do better than what we're really doing? The real change is the climate, brought about the climate patterns. The insured losses, only one example I have given here. The insured losses from convective storm, and I'm not really talking of the hurricane season, etc., which is actually going to set in from today. Traditionally, it's set in the US, in the North America, from 1st of June onwards. The convective storm itself has been producing losses worth $10 billion straight year after year from 2008 onwards. And there is a prediction that North Atlantic activity is going to produce much worse hurricane season this year. So you can imagine the kind of havoc it's going to create in the year 2013. And of course the use of technology for insurance, that's for sure. I'll quickly go through this. Some of these risk profile in terms of the changing patterns are engulfing all of us. We've been caring. I think that takeaway will be that, am I really so insulated that when I talk of hurricane, I know that this has really not happened here. So let me be very happy it has not touched us, it will not touch us. All right. Is that a fair conclusion? 9/11. We know 9/11. We know all these numbers. Why I'm showing these numbers once again is that when 9/11 happened, everything became for the first time. In terms of the lost history, everything for the first time. In terms of its largeness, largest aviation, largest BI, largest property, largest of the workmen compensation, etc., etc. Has the industry learned any lesson? Well, probably they have. Somebody asked me in the recess, or not recess, yesterday, what happened is that when 9/11 happened, the capacity evaporated in India, and we have to really go for our own pool. And my response to that, the point is well taken, but it happened in US market as well. The President Bush had to come forward with TRIA, and that was a measure that was supposed to be for 1 year, but it's been continuing till 2014, for the simple reason that the commercial market actually had contracted, and they didn't have any capacity left, and therefore the government actually came in. The lessons learned was that it was supposed to be a fire test. They had never ever thought that few mad people will just come and crash and make them crash against these buildings. The worst thing that could have happened is that the policy wording was not in place. So what really generated was that a concept of contract certainty, which the market lapped it up, and they have now ensured that contract certainty models are so created that we don't have to have to repeat such issues. And I think this is the point, Milind, is the way forward in the Indian market. It's not about consumer fora, what they say. It's not about what Supreme Court says, or not what about the analysts say. We have to have contracts in place which generate contract certainty. That's the way forward. Piracy, everyone knows what it's all about, how it has impacted. The one revealing feature that I thought I must share here, which is really changing the paradigm, as no one has thought ever, that can Bangladesh also pose a threat? And there are few mad people who are saying, yes, in the next 2 years' time, Bangladesh can also pose a threat, and they have a credible theory behind this conclusion. And I can share it, but for what time I think we can take it offline. United Nations Environment Program, what they're really concerned about is the fact that in 2012, the summer ice formation in Arctic area was 50% lower than 1980s and 1990s. And so is the case with Greenland, and so is the case with so many other places. And lest all of us feel that, look, it's happening out there. It's really not only impacting me. Let me show you what Ma'am Sunita Narayan is saying. And she's Director Center for Science and Environment. And what she's saying is the recent studies in Himalaya by Indian scientists confirm glaciers are receding at unnatural rates. This means our northern rivers fed by glaciers melt. We'll first see floods and then shorten the freshwater flows. We will also see more heat waves, more extreme events, floods and loss of crop productivity. And we're not talking about the far future, but changes as early as 2030. And if this is what is going to happen, the plea that's really being discussed with the industry, can we have these rating factors woven into our underwriting so that these patterns can be taken into account? The other, area where I thought I must take, before you is the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, And there is a certain reason, not that the enormity of the size, That's not the reason why I'm really presenting this story to you. Why I'm presenting this story to you is that something happened, and you know what happened here. More than 200 million gallons of crude oil was pumped into the Gulf of Mexico for a total 87 days, making it the biggest oil spill in the US history. 16,000 total miles of coastlines being impacted. The President announcing that they would have a 20 billion spill response fund, and then the fines to the extent of $40 billion and plus much more. The story that I'm trying to tell here is that unlike what we saw in Bhopal, and Bhopal was also mentioned by the chairman here, Chairman GIC. Bhopal, when it happened, we made it more of a criminal case. And I find that when such a thing happens in India, we try and really go after people, put them to jail, make it a criminal thing, you know. What we got in response was a big and $750 million. According to me, it should have been in billions and billions and billions, you know. Then only probably those unfortunate Indians who had suffered with their lives and properties, etc., and villains would have probably got a much better compensation. So the point I'm trying to articulate here is that when something happens of this category, they make it a civil liability and ensure that the wrongdoer is not allowed to go away. Fine, you've done something, whether on one side you may have a ridiculous situation, alien invasion really falling through, and then plausible event on the other side saying that, well, number of economies fail together, their financial systems melt, so what happens? So is this not a black swan event? But what exactly is black swan? And how does it display in our conscious memory in the last 8-10 years? Has it really happened? Have we really turned to the black swan event? Are we really going to take some lessons out of it? Now you have this Rumsfeld matrix, which I'm not even talking about unknown knowns. Let's start with known unknowns. I recognize that I know something is not known to me and recognize that. But more importantly, there are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns, that is to say, know that some things we do not know. And also, there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know. And that's where it really hits us. In all these 4 examples, I think these are all classic examples of black swans. You know. Starting from Tohoku earthquake on the 11th of March 2011, when it happened, forget the intensity, forget the fact that it was $30 billion loss. I'm told that exactly about 100 years ago, similar thing had happened. Lessons were learned. Even in a society like Japan, it was forgotten. It was not taken as a black swan event that can repeat itself, and if it does repeat itself, what's really going to happen to the generation that we are now seeing? And it's also generated one more exposure, which was not there before. I think Japanese tsunami has exposed us to that. The Thailand floods have exposed us, and one more, the theory of non-destructive BI. Non-destructive BI, we'll talk about it. Thailand, similar thing happened. When the floods actually happened, it was over a prolonged time. We had cut the forest, the dam was not able to contain. We knew the authorities knew something dramatically wrong. The wetlands had actually been converted into urban conglomerates. You were waiting for disaster to happen. New Zealand, we all knew that there was a river flowing to Christchurch. And what happened, the soil had become so soft, when the shaking happened, it shook so badly that we started having water bubbling out of those sandstones. The soil actually had been pummeled so badly that we started having the water actually coming out of that. And you saw the phenomenon of what is now called a liquefaction. But it was there. And then this base similar, more or less similar to what we really have talked about in Thailand. Now, it may, when I started the first slide, yes, it may range from being utterly ridiculous to utterly unbelievable. But people are saying that you're really sitting on a Manila Trench, which is supposed to be the most dangerous tsunami sources in the world, which is extending 990 kilometers, and it can unleash tremendous problems. So that scientists are saying, let's move away from black swan, and then let's now talk of Donald Swan. What it means is that it is possible, though you believe it is unlikely in both scale and definition. Globalization, we all know what it really means. We know, we started with epidemics, we no longer have having epidemics. We started having pandemics, and we know the example of pandemic SARS, H1N1, and how from one part of the globe it really engulfs us and it really takes toll of human forces, supply chains, customer market, etc. Similar is the case on the infrastructure, where we are now seeing billions and trillions of dollars being spent on the infrastructure. One example, I just culled it here, in 2008, a closure of 3 leading gold mines in South Africa due to power outage had led to increase in 5% of world gold price. So that's supply chain. Now we talked in the context of Tohoku, quake, and we said what really had 7 scale meltdown at Fukushima. Now there was a paint factory near the Fukushima. There were certain US manufacturers and a lot of other people who were dependent on that paint, and they were shut down because the plant actually wasn't operating. So the first time we saw, because of the long, linear supply chains, it can not just result in supply chain problems, in contingent supply chain problems, but also in terms of non-destructive business interruption problems. Have you ever seen an airport with water like this? Well, this happened in Thailand. Have you ever seen an industry where we had this Icelandic, cloud bursting through, and the impact on the European industry was $200 million a day in terms of lost productivity. Passengers impacted 10 million. Meteor. We have seen in February this year how a meteor attack, it wasn't really an attack, it was an accident. It destroyed 3,000 homes in Russia. Damaged buildings across 6 cities, 1,200 people injured, preliminary damages something like $32 million. Now, this is where I think all of us will really have to start debating, if such an event happened, are we really paying for it? If the wording is saying we know we have not been excluded, we have to pay for it, have you factored in our pricing? So that's what underwriting is all about. And then you have the meteors I'm not really going to. Non-destructive, I think I have covered in terms of pandemic, volcanic, you have the cyber attacks, WTC, etc., etc. Now, somebody says, look, nothing is really happening. I just thought, one study which I had picked up from an earlier speaker somewhere, and it says that you have a problem in Delhi, you have a huge population, you have, houses and industrial complexes, etc., being built alongside the embankments. But what is most surprising and appalling, perhaps, is that according to a Delhi state disaster plan, in the eventuality 1 in 100 year frequency flood, all these embankments would fail to meet the requirement. And that's really worrisome. Are the underwriters in India are really taking cognizance of this event, such events in our future scenarios? Yamuna bet in 2001, and now you can see in 2010, it has completely changed. I just thought, let me bring to you Lloyd's Global Underinsured Report. They have conducted this study through Center for Economic and Business Research. What is really throwing up is opening our eyes. The report shows that there is a global annualized insurance deficit of $168 billion, leaving 17 high-growth countries severely exposed, and that includes India. This is not a good story. Now, what is imperative is that the result of the catastrophe is the unnecessary burden being placed on the state and higher cost of recovery after disaster. And we have this discussed, that how really it impacts. The additional secretary was talking, and she was actually the district manager or whatever, she saw that. And that is a classic problem that we have when we don't have a well-built security around these contingencies. It actually falls on the state and it eats into the developmental budget. And that's not such a good thing, because somewhere it's really going to impact the growth story. Four major catastrophe events, has been highlighted. And I will only highlight just one Chinese earthquake. Sorry. The total damage, the economic damage was $125 billion, and which really meant digging a hole to the extent of 2.77% of the Chinese GDP. The insured loss was just 0.4% met. And they really had to, and at the cost to the taxpayer was $137 billion. Somebody asked me questions previously, why they're so high? I mean, why? Because they spent more money to reconstruct to let it become even better. But that's imagine the kind of money they had to divert from the other developmental funds. So the same story is being described here. They insured us about this, etc., etc. And in India, per risk deficit, in terms of the catastrophe, is close to $2 billion. Now that's not a good story. That means more than 10,000 crores per risk. And if you really add all the risks together, what we're really seeing in India is a total gap of more than $20 billion. And that's why we have these bodies created, National Development Management Disaster Center, etc., etc. I think in terms of sustainability, the message that probably all of us will be carrying home today is that let's all work together. This is not single agency's job, it's a collective responsibility. So I'll just now talk through a bit in the next 10 minutes or so on how Lloyd's market works. As I said, it is not an insurance company. It's a marketplace. And how does it work? Now, this is a market which is more than 325 years old. 325 years old. The oldest market in the marketplace in the world, and perhaps one of the most modern as well. What happens is that on the right-hand side, you have the capital flow coming in. And these capital flows coming from people who are called as members. Today, there was, before or around 82 or 83, we had something like 33,000 members. Today, we have something like 2,150 members around the globe. And this capital comes from different sources. US contributing, UK market contributing, Europe contributing, rest of Asia contributing, Far East contributing. So the capital actually is flowing in from every single source. Now what happened was that, given certain turmoils that the market actually went through between 88 and 92, when the market literally went under due to the onslaught of something which is called as asbestos-related liabilities in the US market, because that was really not done on the claims-made basis, this was done on the occurrence basis. Lloyd's market almost had gone under, and they had to have something like 14.5 billion pounds of liabilities reinsuring with equitas, which further they reinsured with one of the Warren Buffett companies. And it's only in 2009 that they have been able to close all these 392 liability scenarios, and now it's all a clean thing. But what they did after that, they said, because when the Lloyd started, as I said, it's a 325-year story, when they started in a coffee house run by Edward Lloyd. And the people will come, people with money, the wealthy individuals. And they would sit with the hull owners, and they would insure their hulls. That's how the whole thing started. They started as a marine market, traveled into property, and now it's becoming a property casualty market through this. So initially they started with individuals. They had unlimited liability. And then it got converted into limited liability concept. And from 90 onwards, it has started encouraging the corporate capital. And today, the corporate capital is forming something like 85% of the Lloyd's, total, capital resources that really come from all over the world, and this is all individuals. When they get into the Lloyd's market, that's the market that you have, they get under, or they have to form themselves into what is called as syndicates. And these syndicates are not the legal entities. These syndicates are the numbers. So every single member, whether he is individual or corporate, first their admission process is not automatic. It is one of the strictest admission processes that you can ever have anywhere else in the world. And that actually arose out of the fact that they started in 1688, and we had the Lloyd's Act of 1871, by virtue of which they said that it would be formed into a society, and a society of underwriters. And then in 1982, it said that the law from the British government, it said that it would be run by a council of Lloyds, and whatever they do, that their bylaws will have the force of the statutory law as per the UK Parliament. So they say very clearly that you come and get formed into syndicates, but these syndicates are going to be run by professional insurance companies, which in their parlance they call them as managing agents. So these people, they run these syndicates, and we have something like 87 syndicates being run by almost 57 managing agents. And then on top of that, you're having the Corporation of Lloyd's, and I represent the Corporation of Lloyd's. The corporation has something like 800 plus people. We're not the holding company. Our dictate does not run. But what we do is that we're like a corporate manager, and we have the strength of the UK laws, by virtue of which we do not control the end underwriting, but otherwise we control the entire process of underwriting, the entire process of risk management, the entire process of admission, the capital formation, the solvency management, and the rest of it. The entire thing is the bulwark of the Lloyd's Corporation. And then you have the business flows here. These business flows are coming from policyholders, from the brokers, the cover holders, which is a very term which is being given in the Lloyd's market. What it means is that there may be certain companies which have been accredited by the Lloyd's Corporation and which can bring business from all over the world, and currently they constitute something like 30% of the business already coming in from anywhere in the world. So what are the key characteristics? Market, as I said, long history, as I said, ensures, and it is a specialty market, tailored innovative solutions, responsible risk taking. Now, let me just show you that this is how the market actually has evolved. 1987, this was the first motor policy that was issued anywhere in the world. And when they issued the motor policy, they did not have the motor concept, they had the hull concept. And they said wheels on the road, the hull with wheels on the road. That's how the first thing started. And then 1906, today if we are drawing something like 40% of our market premium coming in from the US, that happened because of this San Francisco flood. Because there was certain Mr. Edward Heath who gave a call to the London market, and he said very clearly, let's not worry about whether my policy has been issued or is covering earthquake or not covering, we will honor all the claims. And then that really sent the huge signal to the market, and ever since we kind of wedded together the US market and the Lloyd's market. And then 1911, you had the first aviation policy. In 1969, the first space insurance. All have it. I think another characteristic of the Lloyd's market has been the chain of security. Now, what it means is that it has two levels, at several levels, and it is at a mutual. So it's partially mutualized society. At a several level, it has two links. You have the first link and you have the second link. The first link is that every policyholder has the backing of the syndicate assets of the tune of something like 41 billion pounds. Second level, that members are required to have certain funds, reserved at the Lloyd's level. That's called the funds at Lloyd's, FAL. And then you have the third link, which is so unique anywhere in the world, which is the central funds available at the society level, which means that every single policyholder will have access to this should the syndicate be not in a position to pay the claim because of certain financial constraints, etc., etc. And then this has certain components like central fund where it comes through levies, we have issued on 2 or 3 occasions we have issued subordinate debts and we have the callable layer. But I think, and I'll cover your point about the solvency. How does a play of capital, it shouldn't be inadequate and it should be too adequate in how it really plays out in Lloyd's Martel. I'll just show it to you. Now, if this slide is further confirming what I have told you before, this is how the sources of Lloyd's capital is, and you can see worldwide insurance industry, Bermudian market, insurance UK, US, individual members, limited, unlimited, and how over a period of time this kind of has been actually changing. So it's an ever-evolving graph, Let me just quickly take you through how the individual capital setting is done at Lloyd. Now, what it means is that you have to have, every syndicate will have to produce the individual capital assessment, ICA. And when it's submitted to the society what it does is that they take care of your business plans and they take care of the fact that you have to produce the disaster scenarios, and based on the realistic disaster scenarios, and based on the simple business plan, the society discusses with their individual thing, and whether it agrees or don't agree, they communicate back to the syndicate ICA. Once the ICA, and I'll just take you through in the next slide, what is constituting ICA. It has an insurance element, which is including the underwriting risk and the reserving risk that the previous presentation we have had discussions on. And then in addition to that, it has credit, operational, market, group, and liquidity risk. Now these together form the initial capital assessment, and it is done to bring it to a level of 99.5% non-exceedance confidence level. So it entitles that particular thing to a BBB rating. But then what happens thereafter, because it's central fund, the way we do it is central fund, and because of the uplifting of that ICA, and so far consistently for the last I think 8-10 years, these uplifting has been to the extent of 30-35%, but this uplifting is a play of how much money that I have at the corporation level, and I may decide that 35% or 30% or even 25%, because if I am really having over surplus of the capital, I might say that I'll retire some of these subordinate debts, or I may have a little less than the 35% uplifting, and make sure that I bring it to a level that it becomes A+, which is my desired level of security rating that I wish to have. So the point that we're trying to make it here is that I make it A+, which I think is good for me, which is not really using too much capital, which is also not making me undercapitalized, etc. So that's how, just the solvency coverage in the central assets, from, if you really track it down from December 2008 to December 2012 levels, the net resources at the corporation level actually have gone up from 2.4 to 3.1 billion pounds. That's where there's a play, and they decide then, corporation level decides then, should I have twice the level of solvency margin that I wish to have? Okay, one to address any breach through, one to trade forward, one to ensure that if I have more capital, that I put it back into the system. All these decisions then accordingly are taken. I think this is to supplement the concept of underwriting profit or the combined ratio. Just one figure I you to concentrate on here. From 2001 onward, if you just concentrate on combined ratio, you'll find only in 2001 we had we had 140%, otherwise it's 98, 90, 96. In 2005, it has been 111. I'll explain to you. Then again 83, then 84, 91, 86, 93, and then again in 2011, 106. Now all these years that we have had a breach of the combined ratio beyond 100, there is a credible story. 2001 happened because of 9/11. Because this was the largest ever single loss outside of US, which was borne by the Lloyd's market. 2005 was the largest ever, both in terms of insured losses as well as in terms of economic loss the world has seen, which is led by Katrina, Wilma, Rita, and so on and so forth. It just kept happening one after the other. And then 2011 storyboard, we all know, we had Japan in March, we had Thailand in October, in between we had Christchurch, and we had Queensland, catastrophes that kept happening. So what's the underlying message then here? The underlying message is that the society has not been able to perfect its art of management to ensure that only in genuine catastrophes there could be a breach of the combined ratio. Otherwise, it is able to take care of the attrition losses, the frequency losses. It's also able to take care of the severity losses. It's only in certain catastrophes. And mind you, 2012, the society posted a combined of 91, and that includes Superstorm Sandy. Superstorm Sandy was $2.2 billion to the Lloyd's market, and this was the third largest ever in the history of 324 years of Lloyd's. And despite that, they've been able to absorb all of that. The regulations, I think I'll not spend too much time because it might sound boring, and I think I'm also coming to the end of my presentation here. What's important to show you here is that, and I'll show this in the final takeaway. The world over, not just the UK market, the world over, there's a neat division coming through between the prudential regulations and the market conduct. And they have recognized in the UK market very clearly as saying, gentlemen, you will take care of the prudential level regulation, not at the rule-based level, but at the principle-based level. So principle-based, prudential level regulations you will do, and then there is a body which is going to look after the market conduct, and that body, when it is starting to really, starting to have its own scrutiny done, they're not really going file by file. What they're really doing is that they're running through certain thematic reviews, and based on the thematic reviews, they're coming to the conclusion whether it's really done or not. Now, in terms of the underwriting, which is what we essentially we're talking about, there's certain minimum standards across underwriting, claims, risk management, protecting reputation, operational processes, and this actually is coming through the council, which then further delegates its authority to a certain body called franchise board, and these are all franchise guidelines which everyone in the syndicate they have to follow. And then you have the minimum standards across key areas. I think what's important here is to show you through the role of exposure management. And this is interesting to talk about here. Exposure management is responsible for managing the aggregation, something which Manu talked about, a potential accumulation of risks and reinsurance within individual syndicates and across the Lloyd's market, and alerting the market to emerging risks. And I'll show you the areas in which it gets done. What it does is that when they start having the realistic disaster scenarios being built, they have 17 structured scenarios. There are certain compulsory scenarios, and these are all run across different thematic regimes, done on a deterministic basis. And there are generic scenarios, and then you have certain compulsory scenarios. Generic scenarios can be marine event, major complex, aviation, etc., etc. Now look at the compulsory scenarios across which they try and develop the real disaster scenarios. If there is a two event happening, and what they're saying is that there is northeast US windstorm followed by Carolinas windstorm, Florida windstorm, and we saw 2005 Katrina was a Florida windstorm, and that actually got combined with the Gulf of Mexico. European windstorm, Japanese typhoon, California earthquake, New Madrid, etc., and so on and so forth. So the major trigger points in terms of major disasters around the globe. They pick it up, they start having these realistic disasters with scenarios done, and you can see the numbers which are really getting thrown here. What do they do with that? More important point is, yes, they do it, but what do they? Why it is being done? It is being done because it is a standardized framework for assessing syndicate and market cap risks over time. Open and transparent, easy to explain to everyone, including non-specialists. It encourages a disciplined approach to monitoring and managing risks. Company-specified alternative drives good business. Business planning tool for future exposure levels. That's very important. Understanding reinsurance counterparty concentration risk, which is one of the very, very important areas to concentrate on. And lastly, but not the least, standard stress tests for capital setting. And what they do in Lloyd's is now being followed elsewhere in the market, and this is all there in the site. The tools are there, anyone can really go and start it. Now, this is the last slide that I have on Lloyd's, and which I thought I must bring it to your attention here. We've seen the capital setting. We've seen how the capital are being set, how the solvency margins, how the solvencies are run, etc., etc. We've seen how the minimum standards are actually being thrown up, What they do here, for the entire market every quarter, they have something like 64 risk classes, which is here. These are RG1 to RGN risk categories, They run it alongside every syndicate. So you have, what they do is that they simulate losses by class, and then they move in, They simulate by class and then move in to produce syndicate-wise results. So you have 64, then moving into 87, and then moving into allocation member-wise. You're really talking about more than 2,000 members. And then ultimately, they move into what is known as calculating the hit on the central fund. To what extent, if there is a hit to the central fund, will it really absorb, will it stand, will it go under? And it's really not happened in the entire history that's really been hit, but the central, it's not been hit more than 3-4 times, but the central fund actually has been strengthened all these times. And they run these different models, 55 models, they run it 100,000 times, literally, believe me. It's not something that I'm trying to exaggerate to. They run it 100,000 times, and then they kind of see the impact on the central fund. Last bit on the Solvency II. What Solvency II continues to do for the Lloyd's market, it continues to treat them as a single entity, as the association, and what they are recognizing, that we realize that you have good amount of understanding on individual capital accounting and standard setting, and therefore, let me carry forward this. They have spent more than $300 million to become Solvency II compliant. This is an issue being now debated in terms of its compliance, about the timing, whether it gets done today or 2016. It's really getting debated in the US market. Just very quick, best practices from FM Global. And I think this would be very interesting for Mr. Chandelier. What it says is that here is a mutual company, and I have already talked about the combined ratios. Out of the total strength of something like 4,500 people, you're talking about having 2,500 engineers with 150 plus PhD scientists and no actuaries. Now, this is not a disrespect to the actuaries. What they say is that we're essentially a risk management company. And when we do risk management, any surplus, we actually plow it back to the people it actually comes from. So you have 176 years in the insurance business, and they have clients, there is a client which is as old with them as 125 years. That means that's the deep relationship they have with the clientele. And they have got the largest market. And they have these, large labs for fighting natural hazards. Now this slide I have plucked from their presentation, which says that losses come in two flavors. You have the individual risk losses and what they're saying is that all these losses even on the NatCat side, lot of it is actually manageable through better risk management, And this is what they have done. They have shown it in terms of the average risk, loss. They have shown it for NatCat, for flood, and all of that. This is the risk engineering philosophy, that you have the current risk coming in, maximum foreseeable loss can be advanced through prevention and through control, and then the maximum foreseeable loss actually can sit with much smaller and reduced risk category. That's what is generated through loss prevention engineering expertise. So now, let me just quickly move on to a few slides on the upshot of the whole presentation, and then few takeaways, First, a generic statement that the essentials for underwriting are built around transparency, that's the first element, profitability, innovation, partnerships, accountability, leading to both customer protection, and I'm insisting the word protection as well as promotion. Because very often I hear the words in the market, protection and protection. I don't hear the word, promotion. So it's very important to really have this woven into the vocabulary. First principle, it is not a frequency loss management. Underwriting is not frequency loss management. It's not a rupee swapping. It's not a dollar swapping. It's the treatment of risks on merit, good versus not so good. It's not a cheap pricing for all. It could be cheap pricing for few, but it can't be cheap pricing for all. If you have cheap pricing for all, probably we are inviting disaster. Then normally world over, there's a China wall, for some good reasons, between the underwriting and the claims, because they see, obviously, at certain level, certain conflicts of interest, And I'm talking about the global industry, normally. The underwriting year, and that's exactly what I think you have pointed out, the underwriting year is a benchmark rather than the year of account. What they do with lawyers is that they declare the results, but they don't close the account until after 36 months from the underwriting year. So what they do is that they watch, not just the IPNR, they watch through the ultimate loss ratios. It's after that they then move into account settlement, not before that. And there are histories, even before that, even after that, if it's not there, there are mechanisms by virtue of which they kind of set their processes. The risk-based capital, I think we have made it very clear, the time has come. We are not, often we hear that data is not there, but I think sooner we bring this thing forward in our industry, risk-based capital setting, that's the first level of discipline. The other things will actually follow after that, because what it means is that if I want to write more long-tail, more dangerous kind of exposures, I should be ready to put more capital on the table, no problem. Capacity and line size is different. I think this is something, a very essential part of the underwriting management. You may have capacity, but you may not have line size. So line size, it does not mean that you're really going to expose entire capacity for that single risk. Because otherwise, you are going to ensure that the entire company is going to go under. There is an institutional mechanism for market collaboration. It's not such a dirty word. Market evolution and we have seen the example of ISO. Market evolution, professional standards, safety management, data crunching, and the market researchers. Just one example I'd like to give, I'll not do others. Jenkins. Jenkins is an institute in Japan. It's an institute within 4 months, once a new model actually is introduced in the Japanese market. This is an institute which has been promoted by the manufacturers, by the surveyors, by the insurers, by all these interested parties. And they let them crash in all kinds of ingenious methodologies. And then they study the repairability of different parts, and then within 4 months they come up with standard times in terms of repairability. So if once that is made available to every single participant, I think AIG does that. You have Allianz which is really doing it. You have so many other companies actually which do it world over. There's absolutely no scope for any friction or dispute. I just wanted to say, leave it on the table, despite the delays that is there on the Solvency II, it's not going to go away. There are lots and lots of talks of, that is not very good, etc. It will not go away, that's my take. The regulatory regime will be recognized separately, and I think we have discussed this between the prudential and the market conduct. the entire market then is left to the market forces, I think combined ratio, I would not like to stretch, but that's the single most, bar which actually decides the fate. The only one point I thought, let me expand on this. When you have subscription, it's different from a co-insurance. Subscription could be capital accretive. Co-insurance, and I am maybe controversial when I'm making this statement, I'm prepared to really face all the battles. And I'm saying co-insurance may not necessarily be market accretive. And we have seen problems, and I think the only word I'll leave it to the House is that we need to do something on this. The final takeaway, just despite all that, and this is exactly what the Additional Secretary and the Chairman JIC said, that despite all the brilliant work that we have done in terms of investment management, in terms of the top line management, in terms of every single work that we've done, but this yellow line I think is a problem, and it is starting from 2002. I mean, that's the number that I had picked up from. I'm sure the previous years probably were not so very different, but every single year consistently, year after year, I'm only showing 2 years, but believe me, every year, 3, 4, 5, 6, the combined ratios have been way above than the acceptable, norm. All I'm leaving to the table is that with negative underwriting profits, India's quest, and I think we have all agreed that we need to really go beyond and try and challenge some of the developed economies in terms of all the standards. It will be very challenging actually to come near some of these